Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today is Thursday, November 21st, 2024. It's a virus you may not have heard of. Here's why scientists are worried about it. A little-known virus is getting a lot of attention this year. It's called Oropouche, and it's been making headlines because of its notable increase in diagnosis. So far, in 2024, there have been over 10,000 cases, mainly in South America and the Caribbean. The vast majority are in Brazil. By contrast, the total Oropouche counts in Brazil recorded between 2015 and 2022 was 261. In August, PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization, issued an epidemiological alert, urging for increased prevention, surveillance, and diagnosis of the viral infection, which is spread by the bite of a mosquito or a midge, a kind of fly that bites humans. Now there's a new concern. A study published in the CDC's journal Emerging Infectious Disease in October reports that sexual contact might be a way to transmit the virus. This is a very big development, says Dr. Tulio de Oliveira, director for the Center of Epidemic Response and Innovation at the Stellenbosch University in South Africa, who was not involved in the study. The midge connection. The virus was first identified in 1955 and named for the village in Trinidad where it was found. The pronunciation Oropouche is harbored in birds, monkeys, rodents, and sloths. It's an aerovirus like dengue, Zika, and Chick. The term refers to any disease caused by insect bites. If a mosquito or a midge, a tiny fly, bites an infected critter and then goes for a blood meal from a human, the virus can take root. The fact that midges spread it is a serious issue. Biting midges are known as no-see-ums, says Dr. Chris Braden, Deputy Director of the CDC's National Center for Emerging and Zoonotic Infectious Diseases. They're so small, they can actually fly through standard window screens. They've long been considered a nuisance, leaving itchy welts or a spurring allergic reaction with their bites. With this understanding that they can transmit a virus that harms humans raises biting midgets to a new level of concern. They're an emerging disease vector that hasn't been well studied. And what happens if you get a bite and catch the virus? Symptoms of Oropouche infection are typical of many viruses and usually last a week. Fever, rash, muscle aches, headache. But some cases can be more severe, causing encephalitis and meningitis. Inflammation of the brain and its surrounding membrane that can cause it to swell. And as the Zika, a mother can transmit the virus to the fetus during pregnancy, which can lead to birth defects and even fetal death. There have been a few cases of maternal and fetal transmission, and there are 4 cases of congenital oropouche infections that have been described, all of which led to microcephaly, which is a small head size. Said Dr. Davidson Hammer, infectious disease doctor and professor of global health and medicine at Boston University School of Public Health. Which is really scary is that there has been a miscarriage and most recently a stillbirth, he added. This woman, who has a stillbirth, was her mid-pregnancy and developed a fever and symptoms of typical dengue, but also typical of oropouche, and then a couple days later, her baby stopped moving. So she went and got an ultrasound done, and it showed her baby had died. Described the infectious disease doctor. They took biopsies from multiple tissues, and everywhere they samples, they found oropouche virus. Sexual transmission. And now there's new evidence suggesting that oropouche could spread in yet another way, through sex. In August 2nd, 2024, a man who had been in Cuba from July 19 to 29 was diagnosed with oropouche in a hospital in Italy. He had developed a fever in his last day in Cuba. During his recovery, researchers used PCR tests to look for the virus in his blood, urine, and semen. To their surprise, they not only found the virus in his semen 16 days after his symptoms started, and 6 days after they had completely resolved, but they also found that the virus was still able to replicate and spread. This can open a new route of transmission, said Dr. Tulio de Oliveira. Of Stellenbosch University. The study was conducted in the Instituto de Ricovera e Cura in Verona, Italy. The results were concerning enough that the findings were published as an early release article in the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's Emerging Infectious Disease Journal. According to the CDC, early release publications are reserved for studies with urgent public health importance. The possibility of sexual transmission brought up more questions than answers, said Dr. Hammer, whose collaborators were involved in the study. But Dr. Hammer emphasized that we have no documented cases of sexual transmission yet. What we know is that sexual transmission could happen, not that it has. Nonetheless, this potential for sexual transmission was serious enough for the CDC to issue a provisional guidance on November 4th, recommending that male travelers who develop oropouche symptoms after visiting areas with level 1 or 2 travel health notices for oropouche are considering using condoms or not having sex for at least 6 weeks from the start of their symptoms. Because stillbirths, birth defects, and severe complications and deaths in adults have been reported. CDC is providing interim recommendations on preventing possible sexual transmission based on what we know now. Read the statement in the CDC website. The role of deforestation. This new potential route of transmission doesn't explain what Dr. Hamer described as an explosion of cases. The number of cases is something like 60 times higher than in previous years, he said. The virus was initially confined to the Amazon basin, even in the epicenter of Brazil. Fewer than 100 cases of oropouche per year were reported between 2015 and 2022. So there's some change. Something's happened, said the infectious disease doctor. Dr. De Oliveira thinks deforestation may be partly to blame. When trees are felled and people move in, typically to farm, they come into close contact with the mammals that live in the Amazon forests and the mosquitoes and midges that bite all of them. So now the virus that was circulating between midges and the mammals is near people, he says. And then these people acquire the virus, and what do? They travel back and forth to the big cities. That can result in the spread of the virus to more people. And if anyone who's infected travels to a different country, then the virus can spread there as well. A newer and stronger strain. Deforestation isn't the only factor helping oropouche thrive. Dr. Hamer said that we now have evidence that the virus itself may have changed through a process called the viral reassortment. He explains that reassortment is one way that segmented viruses like oropouche create new strains. As the name implies, segmented viruses are made up of multiple smaller segments or units. You can think of these as detachable pieces of the virus. If two segmented viruses infect the same cell, they can mix and match their segments to create a new hybrid version. This hybrid version is what you call a new strain of the virus. A study by Brazilian infectious disease researchers published on The Lancet in October found that oropouche virus has changed so much that people who had immunity to it in the past no longer do. Basically, it suggested that the virus has undergone a reassortment, and it is very different from what had been circulating previously, explained Dr. Hamer. People who had immunity from past episodes, 5-10 years ago, they could become infected again. And not only can this version of the virus infect people who had been immune before, it may infect people faster than ever before, explaining the current unprecedented spread. It looks like it grows much more rapidly. It might be more virulent strain of the virus, says Dr. Hamer. Looking ahead. Neither experts think they are on the brink of a global outbreak quite yet. We are alerted by our oropouche, but not concerned that it will cause a global outbreak yet, says Dr. Oliveira, who led the team that first detected the Omicron variant of COVID-19 in South Africa. The challenge is that this is such a new disease that most clinicians, including infectious disease specialists, are not aware of it, and we need to make more patients and healthcare providers aware of the disease and increase access to the diagnostics so we can test for it, says Dr. Hamer. Over the next year, we are going to learn a lot more. Federal courts trumpet steps to protect workers after #MeToo movement. The federal courts have taken extensive steps to protect workers from abuse, discrimination, harassment since the rise of the Me Too movement by creating more paths to report misbehavior and offering a new training session for in-house investigators. U.S. District Judge Robert Conrad Jr. said Wednesday, the administrative office in the U.S. courts would handle the judiciary's administration. Reported that the overall number of complaints against federal judges remains small, with just 3 brought by judiciary employees under the Judicial Conduct and Disability Act in the last fiscal year. Many more complaints are handled internally through mediation, court leaders said. In some ways, we have more of a middle management problem than a judicial problem, said Conrad, who was named director of the administrative office earlier this year. Pointing to statistics showing many complaints are not about judges per se, but about other court employees. However, some outside critics and former court employees say workers they've talked to don't trust the internal system and don't use it to report complaints, meaning any statistics are likely to be undercounted. Conrad said the courts are making steady, unsustained progress toward tearing down barriers to report misconduct for the 30,000 people who work in their buildings, from judges and their staff to federal public defenders. This is not the systemic failure that some critics stuck in a 6-year time warp have used to describe the judiciary efforts. Conrad added, the journey has not reached its destination, but we are committed and have demonstrated this commitment with concrete steps. Abusive conduct, retaliation complaints. The bulk of complaints against judges involve abusive conduct, the new report said, followed by allegations of retaliation against people who report problems. In July, a federal judge in Alaska resigned after investigators found he engaged in a sexual relationship with a former clerk and created a hostile working environment in his chambers. Eliza Schatzman, who interacts with many current and former federal law clerks through her legal accountability project, said the people she talks to have not and would not report misconduct because they do not believe it will be taken seriously or investigated vigorously. With limited remedies available, no legal protection against retaliation, and sadly, often no legal counsel to assist them. It is difficult to convince law clerks to stick their necks out and blow the whistle on misconduct. Schatzman said law clerks face enormous headwinds in reporting misconduct, and the federal judiciary does not make the process any easier. The quality of legal protections for judiciary employees has been hotly debated in Congress and reviewed in 2 separate audits this year. A pair of reports by the Government Accountability Office and the National Academy of Public Administration offered recommendations the judiciary continues to review. Representative Norma Torres, a California Democrat, who has called on the judiciary to do more to shield workers from abuse, said in a written statement Wednesday that deep concerns and significant questions linger about the court's commitment to reform. Sexual assault and harassment are pervasive issues that demand substantive, urgent action, not rhetoric, Torres says. It is troubling to continue to see insufficient steps being taken to address the concerns raised by the House Appropriations Committee. And I will continue to closely monitor the judiciary's efforts, or lack thereof, to protect the safety and dignity of all individuals, inside and outside the courthouse. Workforce survey, not public. Torres is one of several critics who want to see the results of a national workforce survey the federal courts administered in 2023, but which is still not public. Judge Conrad said confidentiality concerns meant the findings would remain under wraps. But the administrators are assessing the survey results and would follow through early next year. Court leaders emphasize that in some ways, their systems go beyond other offerings for federal workers by, for instance, allowing people to report instances of hostile or abusive behavior. Conrad said the Code of Conduct for federal judges now prohibits abuse or harassment by judges themselves, as well as failing to report reliable instances of potential wrongful acts they observe by others. The Office of Judicial Integrity at the court's headquarters in Washington, D.C. has expanded to include 3 people, with 2 more expected to come on board. The house holds training for court systems nationwide. Since the federal courts operate in a patchwork with different rules and management across a dozen or so circuit court systems, there are about a dozen more employees who handle workplace complaints spread out across the country. The systems for reporting misconduct can be Byzantine and contribute to employees' inability to find lawyers to help them navigate the process. Some auditors have recommended employees who bring complaints with merit should be able to recover attorney fees. I get that the judiciary is trying to do more to protect its workers, said Gabe Roth, who fights for more transparency through his nonprofit group, Fix the Court. But there remain obvious reforms that appear to not even be considering. From ensuring mistreated staff have access to legal assistance, to mandating workplace conduct training for judges and other managers. And these omissions do not instill a lot of confidence. Roth and other close observers of the federal courts said the internal system for resolving employee disputes remain rife with potential conflicts of interest because the judge overseeing the dispute can work in the same courthouse as the judge who is the subject of a complaint. The judiciary has said multiple ways to report complaints are meant to mitigate the problem of conflicts of interest. House Ethics Committee is deadlocked on whether to release Gatz's report. The U.S. House Committee on Ethics is deadlocked on whether to release its report into former Representative Matt Gaetz, whose nomination to serve as President-elect Donald Trump's Attorney General has been plagued by controversy. After meeting behind closed doors for about 2 hours Wednesday, panel chair Michael Guest, Republican Mississippi, told reporters there was not an agreement by the committee to release the report. Ranking Member Susan Wild, Democratic from Pennsylvania, said shortly after that there was no consensus on the issue, and that the committee will revisit the matter on a meeting on December 5th. I will say that a vote was taken, Wild said. As many of you know, this committee is evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans. 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, which means that in order to affirmatively move something forward, somebody has to cross party lines and vote with the other side. That did not happen in today's vote. The highly anticipated report is in the culmination of a probe into allegations that Gaetz participated in sex parties, used illegal drugs, and had sex with a minor. The FBI investigated similar allegations beginning in 2021, but the Department of Justice did not bring charges. Gaetz, a conservative firebrand from Florida and a loyal Trump defender, resigned his seat before the panel voted on the report, and insists he did nothing wrong. Gaetz himself was on Capitol Hill Wednesday meeting with the Senate Republican who likely will determine his fate as Trump's nominee to lead the DOJ. Several have said they want to see the ethics reports as part of Gaetz's confirmation process, but have generally treaded cautiously about his nomination. Some publicly say he's faced an uphill battle and will have to answer tough questions through the confirmation process. Texas Senator John Cornyn, who sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee, which would take up the nomination, told reporters he wanted to see the full record about Gaetz and expected details of the ethics report, who would come out in some form. Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, the Judiciary Chair, sent a letter to the House panel requesting the report and records of the investigation be turned over immediately to the Senate committee. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican, warned that releasing the report violated the panel's practice of not publicly revealing any information about probes of lawmakers who were no longer House members, saying it would open Pandora's box. But ethics chair guest previously told NPR that the speaker will not be influencing the decision of the committee. We will reach an independent decision as a committee when we meet. Wild, the top Democrat on the panel, has said the report should certainly be released to the Senate, and I think it should be released to the public, as we have done with many other investigative reports in the past. Democrats are pushing the issue. 97 House Democrats sent a letter to the committee Tuesday, requesting the immediate release of its report. Representative Sean Casten, a Democrat from Illinois, said Wednesday that he plans to force a full House vote on whether the report should be released. Kedrick Payne, a former House ethics attorney and currently with the Campaign Legal Center, told NPR there are examples of the panel releasing their reports after members have left. They absolutely can release it. They just typically don't. Attorney for Women reveals their ethics testimony. Joel Lepard, an attorney who represents two women who testified before the House Committee on Ethics, told NPR that his clients were among a group of 4 or 5 young women in the Orlando area who knew Gatz had met up with him in 2017 and 2018. He said they testified that they attended sex and drug parties with Gatz, who was then sitting member of the House. One of Leopard's clients told the committee he witnessed Gatz having sex with a minor at a party in July 2017. The women also detailed how Gatz paid them with Venmo and PayPal, with notions and dates for each occasion. Gatz, who led the charge to oust former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, alienated many of his fellow House Republicans for launching the chamber into weeks of chaos as they sorted out whom to elect Speaker. McCarthy openly said Gatz was trying to end the ethics probe and that the committee needed to complete its work. The Justice Department investigated Gatz, but declined to bring any charges as the House Ethics Panel considered his case he publicly released in September. His response to questions about engaging in sex with a minor, saying, "The answer to this question is unequivocally no." Gatz begins Hill outreach. Trump said on Tuesday if he was reconsidering the Gatz nomination, gave a firm no. Several Republican senators argued Trump won the election and deserves to install the people he wants in top cabinet positions. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, an Ohio U.S. Senator, accompanied Gatz to his first set of meetings on Wednesday. South Carolina GOP Senator Lindsey Graham, a member of the Judiciary Panel, said he had a very good meeting with both Gatz and Vance. He added, "I fear the process surrounding the Gatz nomination is turning into an angry mob. And the unverified allegations are being treated as if they are true, and I have seen this before." He didn't explicitly say he would vote for Gatz, but urged his colleagues not to join the lynch mob and give him the chance to make his case.